Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Sales Scoop. This is a weekly live show for tech business founders who want to improve how they sell. My name is Alistair Cole. I'm your host for today. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science and artificial intelligence, and 2 decades experience in sales and marketing. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by our guest, Carmen Lincolne. Hello, Carmen. Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, Al. Nice to see you.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's going to be a great episode.
Yep, I'm really looking forward to the chat.
Excellent. So, really keen to get into your sales scoop. What is the number one new biz tip you would share with our audience? But I'm really keen that everybody get to hear a little bit about your story, your journey, what's happening with Ivy Tech. So, tell us a little bit about you and your journey to 2025, please.
Yes, I'd love to. So, yes, I'm Carmen. I'm the founder of Ivy Tech, and we are basically a services company that supports startups and scale-ups with borderless tech teams. I started actually previously to 2018 building software development teams out of Ukraine. And that was, yeah, just the most amazing hub to find developers. It was a really exciting time to provide ethical and stimulating employment for kind of a country that, still needed a bit of a boost. So I would spend a lot of my time there partnering with startups in the US and the UK and Europe to provide the talent. Now, since the war in Ukraine started, we have kind of opened up some other hiring hubs. We still work with a lot of Ukrainian developers and support them where we can, and so do our clients. But we have put a big focus on Portugal, for example, as well as one of our hiring hubs.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I love this concept that you have of like borderless tech teams, right? And you're filling the gap between those people who thinking about outsourcing and not sure about bringing in, internal, dedicated, expensive talents. How does Ivy Tech, like, how are you specialists at filling that gap?
Yes, that's a good question. So the way I describe it is we are like the best of three worlds. So we are recruiters, we are outsourcing, and we're employer of records. So our kind of usual client, it's maybe a startup that's seed stage or Series A stage, and they essentially need to grow their existing tech team by a few more roles. So they come to us and we work really closely on writing job descriptions, doing a bit of a gaps analysis. Who do they actually need in the team? Then our internal recruitment team goes into a borderless market. And in most cases at the moment, it's Portugal. But to your point, we do have borderless capacity and we have talent in 10 different countries at the moment.
Yeah.
We then put a team together that's really tailored to what the clients need. So we very rarely have developers sitting on bench waiting for the next project because, to be honest, 9 out of 10 times it's not a fit. Like every startup has a different need in terms of technical skill, in terms of mindset, attitudes, experience, maybe a particular focus they have. So we put this team together for them and we stay engaged as a co-employer. So while the startup experiences like an in-house employee dedication, the developers full-time, they're part of their Slack, their Jira, they get a hoodie. Most of our developers actually stay on LinkedIn. They don't work for Ivy Tech, but for that particular company. So this becomes their professional home. However, we stay in the background. We manage the contracts, the health insurance. So we do private health. We do lots of other perks and gifts, laptops, regular check-ins. So our main focus here is the well-being and the retention of the developer. And that synergy works really nicely. We often get to a point where the startups say, okay, this developer has worked with us now for 3-4 years through kind of the Ivy co-employment. We are now ready to relocate this developer to London. We've had relocations to Australia, and we want to take that developer on our payroll. So we do work with the clients then to make that happen as well.
Yeah, I mean, relocation to Australia sounds okay. Won't be for everybody. And I mean, that all the pleasure that comes with the new hire, but without the pain. Is that sounds like that's what you're offering? And is that why your retention rate? I read on your website it's 93% that people are keeping your talent. Is that why, or is it a different reason?
Yeah, the reason our retention rate is quite high is because we stay super close to the developers. So I think that's a risk when startups like go and find their own, I don't know, Fiverr developer. I think there is a place for that probably in the very early days, but it becomes like the effort of keeping your finger on the pulse of a
Yeah.
remote developer is actually quite a lot. So we have a really good process in terms of very regular check-ins, an active Slack community. We, occasionally do in-person meetings where we get all the developers together in one place, or we do digital parties if in-person isn't appropriate or not possible. And I think keeping the finger on our pulse, keeping a close relationship with the developers and meeting their needs to where they are, particularly right now with our Ukrainian developers, has resulted to high retention. So I think that's one. And the second one, we work with really cool clients. Like we've got fintech clients that provide payment services to some of the world's largest banks. We work with US, AI-driven health tech companies, with ethical investment companies, so with beauty companies. So I think the work our developers doing are really interesting. And we very rarely work with companies where we feel like we can't really sell the vision here, because we see ourselves not just as salespeople to customers, which is something we're going to talk about, but also as selling a position to the developers, because the vision is always going to stay in this job for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. No, fascinating. And if people want to go and check it out, they can head over to ivy-tech.com and read more about you and your case studies. We've got LinkedIn is open for chat now. If anybody's got any questions for Carmen on Ivy Tech, and also for her upcoming Sales Scoop. And given we're on LinkedIn Live, Ivy Tech is tearing up a storm with 4,000 followers on LinkedIn. So check that out too. Right. So, without further ado, we'll go into our backstory in a little bit. What's your sales scoop? What are you bringing for our audience today? What is your one thing, Carmen, that you'd want to share?
Yes, my sales scoop for today is networking, which is a theme that kind of has followed me throughout my life, whether it's in business or personally. I think I'm a big networker, and I've seen it to be very effective for a B2B services company.
Yes, and you and I met at Sifted Summit in the first few days of October last year, and I think that's interesting. There's a lot of great things happen at networking events. It's a big topic, and we've got some sub areas to dive into. I think for a lot of people, certainly for me at the start, it was a big danger word, like a big awkward kind of feeling, right? And you. I've seen you there. You love it now. You love networking. You've developed that. Were you always super enthusiastic and positive about it, or how have you built up to being as confident now with networking as you are?
I think it's a bit of a skill that everyone can develop. I do think some personalities find networking a little bit easier than others, and I'm definitely more extroverted. I grew up in a very lively church, so I think connecting with people, on a weekly basis, plus events, people I haven't met before, has kind of been in my DNA ever since I've been a child. But I must still say, when I started professionally networking, it definitely was quite awkward. And I think what I've learned to tell myself over the years, that I think everyone at a networking event, whether it's a big conference like Sifted or a 20-person founders dinner, everyone feels a little bit awkward, unless you go with a colleague, of course. But if you're just there on your own, I think there is a bit of the spotlight syndrome. It's like, oh, everyone's looking at me. But the fact is, everyone has the same spotlight syndrome. So we're kind of all in the same boat. And that always helps me push through the awkwardness.
Yes, there's still times when it feels like that for me, and I have to remind myself, everybody's here for networking. It's okay to kind of meet somebody and keep moving. And I think that's something that I struggle with, kind of disconnecting after a long time. But actually, there's a whole sea of people to meet, and we're there for networking. So, tell us a little bit about, what does networking look like for you now? What are you doing now? What are the big elements? What are the components of your networking? How does it look like for Carmen and Ivy Tech now for you?
Yeah, so we have over the years really found that networking is one of the most effective kind of sales strategies for us. I think it's different for the type of business. Like, I think networks are always great, but particularly for B2P services in a fairly competitive space, like where we are with recruitment and software development, building personal connections is a lot of fun. I find a lot more fun than a nameless Google Ads. And B, it usually yields, into long-term sales for us, and it's comfortable for both sides. The process I go about, so I set myself KPIs, how many events I'm going to go to, for example, every month. I now have 2 children, they're 2 and 4, so my kind of, event attendance has dropped a little bit since I've had those 2 little boys, but I still try and go to an event 2 or 3 times a month. On top of that, I'm part of a founders network called Opus. They put on regular events. There's an online community as well as an in-person community that has really helped to kind of stay involved in a network. So I think it's choosing where you want to go. For me, it's a mix of where is my target market? Like, like a Sifted where we met, there's a lot of startup founders, with great ambition and great growth strategy. So that's a really good one. But for me, there's also networking where I'm just part of a group. Like Opus is not really like a massive sales thing for me. It's more like, there's other people building companies. What is there? Can we learn together? And sometimes something comes of it, sometimes not. But that's also just a really lovely space to be networking in. And then I often go to events as well for my own learning. Like I've been to a recent branding workshop, which I desperately wanted to learn about how do you build a better brand. And that was a really great time to network. There were maybe 30 people. It was actually a really, really good networking event, even though I went for my own learnings.
Well, I think that's a really great insight that we talked a little bit about for the show. The fact that you were looking to genuinely learn something that wasn't just about meeting people. So it was kind of 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think networking doesn't always mean it's Web Summit or it's, this kind of business show where there's thousands of people and everyone is exhausted and burned out by the end of it. I think networking can be a really intimate founders dinner with 6 people, or, like the groups I'm part of. I'm part of a few WhatsApp groups as well. And whenever I feel like, okay, there's someone asked a question and I can actually help out, I offer that person a call with me, and vice versa. People have offered me some of their time to polish my LinkedIn profile or other things. And that is all part of networking. I think the absolute key is when you've made a good connection with someone is how do you stay connected? So I have, I'm religious about connecting with people on LinkedIn because, I'm religious about a few things. So LinkedIn is one of them. There has to be a connect either before or after we meet. I do post quite a lot from my profile, and I do this to kind of keep, eyeballs, particularly on Ivy Tech. And then I also do a lot of WhatsApping now. So I was saying to my colleague recently, I barely do anything on email anymore. Most of my work is actually done on LinkedIn and WhatsApp these days.
Okay. And then talking about LinkedIn and online, what's your balance between the in real life, which I understand with, a young family, that's going to take a bit of a backseat, but that will come back. How do you, how many kind of like online, what kind of online networking do you do versus offline?
Yeah, I would say online, there's definitely a few Slack groups and WhatsApp groups I'm part of. So that's something I check every day, following the thread, seeing did someone ask a question where I can maybe make a connect to someone in my network, or is there a way I can offer value, not necessarily within Ivy Tech. That's one. I'm also a mentor at a kind of startup accelerator that happens online. So that's a really wonderful way to network with other mentors. They're mainly all services business owners, and also obviously connecting with the founders. And then in terms of social media, for me, LinkedIn is the main thing. So I try and post 2 to 3 times a week. I engage with other people's contents, to give them a boost because they're my friends or business friends, or to just get attention onto the Ivy profile.
Yeah. Great. Okay, that's a good spread. And then in terms of the real in real life, the in-person events, we talked about how sometimes it can feel awkward at the start. What tips do you have for someone watching or listening who thinks, oh, that sounds terrible, I know I should be doing it, but what tips would you give them to make it less awkward? How can you help them?
Yes. The first one would be mindset. So when I go into a networking event, like I usually actually start with my physical posture, like roll my shoulders back, pull my tummy in, put a smile on, just to be ready to be fully present. And it gives like the body posture has a lot to do with how you internally feel as well. That's one. Then I do usually try and have a few kind of questions up my sleeve. So I think confidently introducing yourself to a group of strangers or maybe your seat neighbor if you're sitting at a panel, like remember everyone is there to network. Like it's just no one knows how to make a start. So if you can be the first brave person, the other person will actually be really thankful. It's very rarely you annoy someone at a networking event introducing yourself, so you can either look for someone who doesn't have a partner right now they're talking to, or if you see a group that's not in like a crazy deep conversation, just try and say, hey, I'm sorry, can I introduce myself? Would be really nice to meet you. I'm Carmen. I'm the founder of a services company. And then I usually have a few questions up my sleeve, something like, what brought you to the event today? Or what did you think about the panel? Or have you been to this venue before? Just something to break the ice and get the conversation going. So that's something I do usually think about ahead of time. And I always adopt a really curious mindset. So instead of like, what can I get out of the event? It's more like, I wonder who I'm going to meet today. I wonder what I will learn. I wonder what kind of story I will listen to today that I've never heard before. So I think the curiosity mindset changes the way you engage with people at a networking event greatly.
It's massive, isn't it? And I think this is where your sales scoop about networking is so relevant to sales, because there's so many similarities, right? People early on lacking confidence, or they've got a big number to chase or whatever, they try and grab the deal, grab the money, grab the client. And it's the same in networking, whereas actually it's counterintuitive, but you have to just give.
Yes,
correct. Give the point of view, listen to them, as my mother would say, if you're talking, you're not learning anything new.
Yeah, that's great.
Right? Yeah, if you shut up and listen to them, then most of it is new content. It's interesting. And I think your mindset as well. So you're arriving physically ready, or you're making an active choice to say, I am physically ready. I'm also mentally ready because I've done a bit of homework and I've got a few things to say. So that readiness, I think, that brings confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And in some cases, when I want to be really prepared, I have a look who's going to be there, see if I've got someone in common maybe that could make an intro. So if I feel quite strategic about a certain event, then I will try and learn a little bit about the couple of people I would like to meet, and then somehow find a way to strategically approach them.
I love this, right? I love this approach because, there'll be hundreds of people there, and often with the apps, you can get people beforehand. And I like going with a list of like 10 people. Will I meet them all? No, not necessarily, but I've got my target list, and I know if I get, half of them, I feel like the event's been a success if I speak to those 5 people. So I love that it's the preparation, right? That gets over the awkwardness. Something you've talked about before, and with me, and also on other podcasts, is being the kind of like the real version of yourself, right? And that authenticity, which is such a difficult word because everybody kind of knows what it is, but it's hard to bring it. What would be your advice to people who are feeling like they're inauthentic? What could they do, or how could they change their mindset?
Yeah, I think it's back to the mindset again. It's like when you enter the room, you're not there to take, but you're there to give. And I think don't go with the expectation that, I'm going to sift it and I'm coming back with, 8 sales calls. And I would often do that. And I just, to be honest, I didn't have a lot of fun because I felt like I had to sell. And I usually didn't come back, with a lot of sales calls anyways. Whereas when I go and either I'm really well prepared of who I want to meet, or if I go with a curious mindset saying, I wonder, what kind of conversation I will have today, or I wonder how I can add value today, then yeah, that takes the pressure off and it makes you a lot more authentic. And to be honest, like I found real friends through networking, that I can, that know things I'm going through, or that I give a call, have coffee with, lunch with. So again, I think if you just go into networking to find clients, it's kind of the wrong attitude today, because networking is so much greater. And I think also, the people you meet, they will introduce you and open doors if you're just a good, genuine person that offers, their own network and advice. Because we've all been there. Like I've had, especially in the early days when I grew Ivy, and also when I worked in my husband's fintech company for 3 years, we've had so many generous people that had networked, for 10, 20 years more than we have, offering their networks to us. So there's also almost like a personal debt I feel like I want to repay. And even if, you early stage founder doesn't fit my perfect ICP, I'm still going to chat to you for an hour and point you in the right direction, because so many people have done that for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many big themes there, right? It is so much broader than just, sales leads. And I think of it kind of like, you are paying it forward. You and I met at Sifted. We don't have a commercial relationship, but you never know about the future, right? And that's it. You want people around you who you trust, who like, who crucially will, introduce you to someone else. I often think of it like that, like, it's a rope, and actually what's helpful is somebody who will introduce you just to one other person, right?
Yes.
Who's closer to, or still, a potential customer. So that networking effect is a really big deal, right? In terms of going to those events, when you get back from Sifted or you get back from your dinners, what information are you, how formally are you treating that? Are you copying that information down? What information are you capturing? What tools are you using? How do you formalize that what comes out of networking?
Yes. So I do have a bit of a process. As I said, I always connect on LinkedIn, and then we've got a CRM system. We just moved to Pipedrive, and then usually I kind of categorize people, whether it's more like my personal connections, where I feel like, oh, this could be a friend or a mentor or someone, that doesn't really fit into the client bucket or anything. It's just someone I would like to kind of keep in my ecosystem and invest in. Then we've got kind of the, potential leads label. So they could go into the leads bucket or into ambassadors, so someone who could maybe open doors for us. And we have like proper ambassador agreements with some people, so they obviously get a thank you as well for doing that. So these are kind of the 3 categories I usually put them in. And then I make sure I stay engaged with their content on LinkedIn. I love connecting people. I mean, I've gotten so many people's jobs before I was even in recruitment, because I would be part of a group and someone's like, oh, I'm really looking for a marketing person. I'm like, oh, this client, of mine actually is looking for whatever, or whatever it is. I just love looking out how I can connect people and add value in that way.
Yeah, and do you know what? The thing is, it feels so good, doesn't it? It feels so nice, especially when there's kind of like almost nothing back. There is a little bit of altruism about making that connection. It costs nothing, and the feedback from people can be stellar, right? Which CRM are you using to put these buckets you're talking about? Which CRM is your choice?
We just moved to Pipedrive this week.
Okay.
We were on Monday.com, but we didn't really love it, so we moved to Pipedrive.
Okay. Yes. Well,
so very new, but I actually used Pipedrive in the past before as well, and it was pretty easy to use.
Yeah, we're big fans of it. Our Revenue Coach platform connects to various CRMs, and Pipedrive is arguably the newest. And because it's the newest, it's built in the best way. Whereas your Salesforce is a huge monster of various products cobbled together and is really difficult to integrate with. So Pipedrive is really, really slick. Fantastic. Look, thanks. And one of the really big, like, kind of networking things, one of the big partnership things I've seen about Ivy Tech is your recent published strategic alliance with Foras Ventures from Scotland. Can you tell us a bit about that partnership? Because that's not kind of networking event, but it's an international network that you're connected into. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of strategic thoughts behind that. And one of them is that we wanted to empower kind of our internal team to build their own networks. And a lot of them, still fairly at the beginning of their career, and it just takes a lot of time and effort. And they're also very operationally involved in, running Ivy Tech. So for us, it's almost getting like a little step ahead in terms of connecting with founders and startups in Scotland. So we are a sponsor for us, which means we pay to be part of their ecosystem. What we get for that is we are the only partner in kind of the software development recruitment space for them. And they are kind of vouching for us. So they're telling the ecosystem that we are, a trustworthy partner that delivers great value. We are mentioned on their website, newsletter. We've been able to present at their events. So it's like, it's breaking the awkwardness a little bit, almost like justifying why we're here. It's like, no, we're part of Forest, like we belong here. And what Forest do is they take startup founders to large events like Latitude in Estonia / Bits and Pretzels, Sifted. So we will be part of that, as well as they do a lot of local events in Scotland. So we keep showing up for those. So we become almost like a furniture. So it's actually a huge networking push, but we already have a label of trust while we enter the room because of For Us. And that enables our more, junior colleagues. So they've been going to the Scotland events, for example. And it's just a little bit of an easier way in, and they can build their own networks as well as networks for Ivy Tech. So that's been really exciting.
Yes. Well, anybody interested in seeing what's happening between Ivy Tech and Forest Ventures, you can get it on the Ivy Tech website, or head over to LinkedIn and join their 4,000 followers. Look, thank you. It's great to get your thoughts on networking. I think the preparedness is a really great way for that awkwardness to be removed and to get the ball rolling. And I love that you're so detailed in capturing the data and putting that immediately into different buckets in the CRM, because a lot of people, they'll have one or two business cards on their desk, but it takes weeks for them to get sorted, and there's no movement, there's no follow through, and that follow up is so critical. So those really helpful. And you're obviously, you're outside of like networking, you're trying your hand through Ivy Tech at lots of different ways of selling, right? I saw your promo video, you're creating live action content, you're doing so many different things. Where would you say, where does networking fit in the kind of grand scheme? Is it right at the top? Is it kind of mid-tier, and actually social media posts are great for you in terms of new business? Where does networking sit?
Yeah, it's right at the top for us, networking and referrals. I think until we reach really big critical mass, where Google rewards us massively with being spot number one, we'll be focusing on networks and referrals and ambassadors for a while longer. And then our content strategy supports that, because the process is kind of, you make the connection, you invite them to LinkedIn to follow us or follow me, and then we kind of stay on the radar. So one example, for example, is that we've recently, started some work for someone who I met 10 years ago. She was actually my husband's very first employee when he started his fintech company. And we hadn't spoken in 10 years, but she messaged me on LinkedIn just because I didn't ask her actually specifically, but I assume because I'm constantly in people's face with my posts. She's like, oh yeah, Carmen, like she's nice and she does something with developers, so I'll give her a ping. And we chatted and, worked a little bit with her. So that is, I think, a really cool example of also long-term networks. I think networks very rarely go from meet to sale the next week. It can be a year or two, or in this case, 10.
Well, and that's a brilliant way to finish, because it is a long game. Like sales, networking is a long game. You've got to be in it for a long time. You just got to keep doing the things, keep showing up, keep recording the data. So, if it's not working for you, if you're watching or listening and it's not working for you, keep going. Don't give up.
And enjoy it. Yes, I think I love it because of the human connection. I'm like, even if no sale comes, I've still met a really interesting person and I learned something, and maybe I even added a little bit of value.
Well, you've added loads of value for me and our audience, I'm sure, today. So thank you very much for your time, Carmen.
Thank you as well, El. It was really fun.
Yeah, yeah, great. Our next show is live a week today at 12 o'clock. It's Kieran and I back talking about how to land bigger fish faster, closing those enterprise deals, so accelerating your deal closing process and landing those transformative deals. That's a week today. You can tune in there. You can also get any of the previous episodes at thesalescoop.com. You can head over there if you're interested in previous shows or what's coming up next. That's us for today. Thank you, Carmen, again. Thanks for your time and expertise. If anybody wants to know more, head over to ivy-tech.com or find Carmen on LinkedIn. I think she'll probably get in front of you on LinkedIn if you're connected.
Yep. Or at some of the startup events in London.
Indeed.
I am still out after 7 p.m. occasionally.
Good. Glad
Thank you for the chat. It was great. And I love that you're putting on the show, just helping us founder figuring out how sales works.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.